Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Is everything good? Okay. So hi everybody. My name is Akinyele, as I said before, and I consider myself to be like an activist, a protester. I'm a vegetarian. I'm just a working class, like construction worker type person, and I have an interest in lots of social issues, police brutality. This is where I know many of you from. Animal rights, like gender and sexuality issues, black social issues. And that's actually what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. So first of all, I want to thank Chris for inviting me. Thanks, Chris. And thanks you all for having me. So if you guys want to give Chris a round of applause, that's cool. Yeah, so thank you. And I also want to say I'm very happy to be here talking about Black history in a month that is not February. Which, I appreciate Black History Month. And I do think it's an important thing, and it's also important to recognize that we can talk about things that Black people have done, and not just between like February 1st and February 28th. And it doesn't mean we have to relegate the history of Black and African descended people to only that one month. So I'm happy to see everybody here in April for that reason. Okay, all right, and so here is my beautiful slideshow presentation of Beethoven Was Black, which it's really more to be sort of controversial and attention getting, right? Like it's sort of like, oh, a lot of people don't know that he was rumored to be or have like an African ancestry. All right, I was hoping to have like a lectern because now I'm holding this. So Beethoven Was Black, Hidden Truths of African Descended People in History. So the words that I use, like hidden truths of African descended people in history, I wrestled with or played with a lot of different ways to communicate that. And the reason why you talk about hidden truths, were they lost? Were they forgotten? Or were they purposely hidden, obscured, whitewashed, like erased from memory or not taught to people for a reason? I tend to think that there was a reason. I don't know about any of you. I think there is a reason why we don't know about the cultural contributions and influences of African people of color, African descended melanated people in history. So everyone in this room knows when we're talking about, like, do I say hidden truths or forgotten secrets or lost, remnants of history? Why do I choose these words? I'm sure that everybody in this room has an understanding that words have meanings. Like words have meanings and their connotations are important. The connotations of words are the difference between hearing a police brutality action described as a riot on the news the next day or a demonstration or a protest, right? The words sort of mean similar things, but the connotation involved is what gives the meaning to what's happening. So connotation and definitions are important in communicating what is happening or what has happened. Even the way the words themselves are used are very similar. So the difference between a riot and a protest. The difference between an anti-police rally or an anti-police violence rally. And if you guys have been watching the news media around that issue and many others, you can see like somebody will call it an anti-police riot. Or it could be called an anti-police brutality action or demonstration or rally. And we're talking about the same 100 people doing the same thing, but it depends on who you are and how you see it, and also how you want to influence your audience to see it. So in the media every day you hear examples of this to convey meaning. Sometimes it's overt. For example, pundits on Fox News, they can call Barack Obama a tyrant. And somebody said earlier, what were we talking about? A socialist, or there was another word. A dictator, right? They can call Barack Obama those words, and that's sort of overt manipulation of your emotions using words. And also it's more subtle, sometimes a dog whistle. For example, you'll hear people say, oh, I'm a family values candidate. And really that means I just don't like gay people, right? Yeah. Does anybody else have an example of a dog whistle or thug? Thug is what, anymore it's not even a dog whistle. It's just like, Inner city. Yeah, inner cities, exactly.
How if a Muslim person shoots someone, they call it an act of terrorism, and a white person shoots somebody, they think he was criminally insane. Yeah,
his dog died, he had a broken hangnail, like, and not to like make light of mental illness, but it is always like, for example, a German pilot flew a plane with 150 passengers into a mountain. It was 2 weeks ago or the week before, and we found like every doctor's note that you can find, could never be a brown person, right? Anybody brown that looked the slightest bit Muslim or would have been a Muslim thug that killed all these poor innocent people. I heard more about his mental issues than I did about the 150 people that lost their lives who were totally innocent. Okay, so we talked about the examples of, like dog whistles or the way that you can use connotations in words to manipulate your emotions. Yes?
If I might throw one.
Please.
Maybe, in the case of these three Muslim Arab victims of...
in Chapel Hill, right?
Yeah, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, the media tended to point out that, to say that it was a parking dispute.
Yeah.
A parking space dispute, whereas it was obviously, it was racist.
Yeah, it was obvious. It was clearly racially motivated. This guy clearly had like a hard on. Can I say hard on? Yeah. For these people, exactly. So it's what you say as much as what you don't say and the words that you choose to say it. So is the point that I'm making. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right, understood this. So one of the greatest orators in American history. He knew the power of language, the words, connotations, and their meanings. And I'm going to use a quote here. This is from a speech that he gave on April 3rd, 1968. Does anybody know what happened on April 4th, 1968? He was assassinated, yeah. So this is from a speech that he gave in Memphis, Tennessee on April 3rd, 1968. Somebody told a lie one day. I'm quoting Martin Luther King now. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see synonyms for the word black. It is always something degrading, low, and sinister. Look at the word white. There's always something pure, high, and clean. Well, tonight, he says, I want to get the language right tonight. And so that's kind of why we're here. We're going to get the language right and also some aspects of the history. We're going to talk for a few minutes about some history that you may not know. And think about whether or not that influences the way that you consider Black or African descendant people in history. And even more importantly to me is, how does this make Black kids see themselves? And how does not knowing some of this information make like young Black and brown kids see themselves? And why is it that, there's February, Black History Month, and we talk about a few things that happened in the rest of the year we're going to see, and I don't have anything against, the shining white faces of people that have done good things or not so good things in history, but to give a totally biased point of view and make this large population think that they haven't come from people that have done anything is doing a disservice to them. So we know that knowing your story of your family story, the history of your people, is a very important way to develop a personal and a self-image. There are cultures in which your personal story, the story of your group, is very important, like the LDS people. Does anybody here LDS or has been LDS? Okay, well, good for you. The history of LDS people, Mormon people, and Brigham Young and Joseph Smith is something, well, you can tell me, is it something that's talked about a lot and is stressed in your family?
The thing is, it's transparency isn't something that they want. It's all, like Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, they're all prominent figures and stuff, but you never hear about the bad things they did. It's always
of course not.
The profound things that they've contributed into society.
But you do hear about it, right?
Yeah.
You hear about do you talk about how the Mormon pioneers faced all that struggle and had to fight all those mean Indians to get
And they'll say that Joseph actually advocated for Black people when he was actually against interracial marriage and.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So and studies show that knowing your family's history or the history of your group of people, it makes you resilient as a person. It gives you a greater positive outlook. It contributes positively to the way that you see yourself in the world, and we deny so many people that because we are taught and shown a white supremacist version of history, which inferiorizes people of color and Black people. So it's very important. Jewish people also have a really strong cultural and group history, as we're talking about just. Do you know the history of your group of people? Is it talked about? Is it celebrated? Can anybody has any other examples of a group of people that really celebrate and stress their cultural history?
Well, maybe not necessarily on the line of culture, but for instance, workers' history.
Right, yeah.
History. We have more in common with workers in Mexico than we do with the rich people that run this country.
Oh, exactly, right? And if you know that, that's power, right? And if you can get somebody else to see that, that's power too. So good. So then you have a kind of a reference point for where I'm going with this. All right. So that's where we're going to start off at, and I just have a couple of slides to show you, and we'll just like walk through, and I'll tell you some of the things that I know that I found out. I was went to high school. I was homeschooled for a little bit. Went to high school. I have like 2 years of college under my belt, so I consider myself to be a pretty like reasonably well-educated person. And there were some things that when I started like purposely educating myself about, God bless you, Black and African history, that I was shocked to find out. And I was shocked to find out, like, how could I have not known this? Like, I consider myself to be pretty smart. Like, I've been in school. I read books. Some of these things I had never heard or seen before, and that shocked me. And when I talk to other people who I also consider smart, and they have no idea or don't believe me, or like, it's just like, oh man, like, we miss so much. It's not just Black history. I'm not just talking about this because I'm Black and I want to make Black people seem like they're so great. But I do want to open everybody's eyes and just kind of share, like, all cultures in the world have a have given rich contributions, I guess is what I'm saying. So we're gonna shout out you. I refuse to succumb to the white man's conspiracy to brainwash me with Eurocentrism. So yeah, I thought everybody would enjoy that. Eurocentrism, does anybody know what that is?
It's just like your reference point is always white people, and others are the people who are non-white. Like,
right.
Yeah, of European descent.
Why is that useful? Is there like a use for Eurocentrism? Is it good? Does it help anybody? What does it help you do?
It helps to oppress people from other
Right. Oppress is a good word.
It's a foundational philosophical principle of white supremacy.
Yeah. Is it exactly? That's eloquent. Very. I probably wrote that down. And so I want to talk about oppression, which is what Alyssa said. Eurocentrism and brain. This is actually I just like the words that he used. I'm really into words and their meanings because words mean things, right? And so I really liked this slide because of exactly what it says. I refuse to succumb to the white man's conspiracy to brainwash me with Eurocentrism. And the word brainwash, I think, is really important. Black people are not technically are not slaves anymore in America, right? We are not enslaved. I'm free, for as much as anybody else can be free. I think they want me to believe. But Black people in America are brainwashed and have been brainwashed. Why?
It's a control mechanism.
It's a control mechanism. What else?
From my observation, and I can't really talk much about this because I'm not Black. From my observation, is society kind of teaches Black people to kind of hate themselves and loathe themselves.
It's exactly what, the Martin Luther King Jr. quote I used, yeah.
About it, like they discourage, society discourages natural hair,
You're Black. The way that your hair goes out of your head is wrong. It's unprofessional. It's weird. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's one example. The other example is I've noticed, like, in the cultural, like, in the mainstream culture, there's a lot of negative influence that, like, kind of perpetuates, how do I put it? It kind of perpetuates the cycle that kind of influences people, like, you're never going to amount to anything, you should just go be a gangbanger.
Yeah, you ain't shit. You ain't shit. Your daddy wasn't shit. The people that you come from ain't shit. Africa ain't shit. So, like, why not, And did anybody see this recent article that was actually proved that the media does disproportionately, like, highlight some bad things about Black? Did you see that? This was recent.
It was the white guy in high school who, teaches his classroom. He was a straight A student. Like, how did this happen?
And they show his yearbook picture as opposed to a 17-year-old Black kid. They'll show him on Facebook, like, giving the finger or doing something that may not even be a gang sign, but it's a gang sign. Exactly. He's a thug, blah, 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 blah. So we're really just talking about how culture can make you see yourself, and it works both ways. So how I see myself as a Black person, how other people see me, and I feel it sometimes. I feel sometimes like when I'm meeting somebody or talking to somebody or interacting with somebody who sees me as like a Black thug on TV, and you just feel it. You feel energy. Right? Yeah. Like even if they don't say anything, I feel like this person is tense or scared or they're treating me as if I'm gonna do something, and I want to buy a sandwich, or I what I mean? So, Eurocentrism is useful. I kind of got off topic. Eurocentrism is useful because it's a control mechanism. You're not enslaved anymore, but I can control you, and I have controlled you mentally because I've led you to believe, you know, all these things. Eurocentrism is sort of the reason why language and religion and traditions were taken away from black people that were held as slaves, right? It was one of the first things to go. You couldn't speak your own language. You saw this also with indigenous people in Indian schools during that time. You're punished or beaten for speaking your own language. Yeah, exactly, for practicing your own religion, or, you know, you want to make this person believe that they're so much further away from anything that's good, and the only thing that is good is white. Well, yeah.
Even now, they still do that. Like, for example, how African Americans have adopted like the accents in the South and stuff. Like, you go up north and people like, don't talk like that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Don't wear certain things. You know what I mean? Like, they still do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I was just gonna say, looking at it, and just, like, I guess one different perspective on it, but you know, to be honest, we are all still enslaved to a system that is completely and utterly mechanized to try to generate for a few instead of many.
Yes. I mean, I agree with you, right? And when I say free, I'm as free as anybody is free. It's true and it's also not true, right? Like,
Freedom of capitalism, freedom to starve to death.
Well, and if you think of prison systems where most of them are minorities, that's modern day slavery.
yeah. Has anybody read the new Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander's book, right? Exactly, or heard anything about it? And they talk about that. So, yeah, absolutely right. And slavery is not technically illegal in America, right? Like, if you're convicted of a crime, or what's
Yeah,
that?
we all have the freedom to be socially, economically,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's totally true. So anybody who's blonde hair and blue eyed and fits the Eurocentric model of beauty, or like your standard, they have the ability to buy whatever they want to and exist in this capitalist system. They might have an easier time than somebody who is not. But so yeah, I don't disagree really with anything that anybody has said. The first point that I'm going to make, or the first slide I'm going to show you, is what's this? Of course, right? It's the continent of Africa. The first thing I want to talk about is how, for 500 years, since the 16th century when the first maps were made, the size of Africa was misrepresented on maps, grossly misrepresented on maps. So this is just an old-time map of Africa. Africa was originally called, by the people that lived there, Al-Kebulan. It's named Africa because of the European guy, I think he was a Roman guy, Scipio Africanus, that like made it to Africa and drew some maps, and they called it that. But the people that lived there was originally called Al-Kebulan. So even Africa itself is named after a colonizer. So this is a map. This is a pretty recent map. This was, I think, done in 2013. And it shows, you know, Asia, Europe, North America. You can see that Africa and Europe, the size is not very different. You know, sort of looks, is anybody familiar with this map? Oh, I was going to bring my globe. I forgot the globe.
Yeah, actually, in a global map like that one, it's very it's a little deceiving. But, I mean, it's hard to discern the actual size of Africa. You can actually fit the United States, China, Europe, all of Europe, parts of yeah, many other countries inside the landmass that is Africa. I have a great map that shows that, but yeah, it's a very large country.
Yeah, it's a very large country.
Africa is supposed to be one of the largest continents, like maybe the second largest or largest.
Yeah, yes, it is. Africa is huge. I think it is the second largest. What's that?
Here and on this map, it's like you could fit Africa in North America.
Yeah, you kind of could on this map. I believe that showing Africa to be smaller and they often do show these countries and continents that are inhabited primarily by brown and black people to be much smaller than they are, like more diminutive in size on maps. I believe it's a system of white supremacy and black inferiority, like we're talking about. It goes to further like diminish the importance of this continent. It's not really that important, blah, blah, blah. And the map that you were talking about, I actually have here.
Oh, okay.
So this shows the true size of Africa, which, as you can see, the continental United States fit comfortably inside, like 90% of China, India, you have France and everything like that, like fits in there pretty neatly. Up here, it's smaller, but everybody can see that. The United States fits in, you know, just the above Saharan part of Africa very easily into Europe, India, and Japan. Or Europe, India, and Japan, like sort of by comparison. Going back to this map too, I want to bring up another point that I wasn't going to make, but I have read, and I'm not saying that I necessarily believe this or not, that, you know, somebody was like, well, speaking of white supremacy in map making, why are Europe and Asia two different continents?
What are they?
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
Why is Europe separate from Asia?
Exactly.
Why do we think of Europe as
That's
separate from
so
Asia?
true.
it's Eurasian.
Oh, that's true, because
Eurasian landmass.
Right? Like
all one
most of
big
the other
land.
continents are separated by like water, or here you have like a very small like a strip of land between them, and that's why we separate them. Why would Europe need to be separate from Asia when if you look at it on a map? So I have not researched this that much, but I read that and I was kind of like, damn, you're right. Why is it? The Alps are here, right? Like the Alps run through there, but
It's the embodiment of Orientalism.
right. So it's whether or not this is an intentional thing, I tend to think that everything is intentional, and I do tend to think that almost everything is based in some way about race or separating people. It is interesting, right? Why would Europe need to be a separate continent? Right? It's actually much smaller than all the other ones, and it's not separate. It's attached to Asia by all of it. So that's an interesting thing that I saw that I wanted to share with you guys. And it just kind of goes back to my original point, which is the point that I'm making throughout this whole thing. Like, white supremacy is a global system. It's very useful because if you can separate yourself from people and make them feel inferior to you, then it's much easier to like take their resources, enslave them, colonize them, etc. When you've separated yourself and then you've kind of created this thing. Is this a downer? I didn't want this to be like depressing. I didn't want this to be like a getting ahead of myself. Sorry. Yeah, I didn't want this to be depressing, as a lot of these things can be depressing, and I didn't want it to be like the Ashley Hates White People show. Like,
Is that presentation next week?
yes. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the first explorers to reach South, or the first like non-American explorers to reach South and North America. There are historians which believe that African sailors reached like these areas of South Africa or South America, what we now call Mexico, Central America, hundreds of years before Columbus did. And we back this up with historical artifacts from civilizations like the Olmecs. Does anybody know the Olmecs? Yeah. And historians that claim that there were like populations of or colonies of African people living along these coasts here. And this is a map of trade winds. So this is kind of just showing you how easy it would have been for sailors in West Africa to to reach what is the northern part of Brazil now, the top of South Africa in this area. So not only do we have like historical artifacts and records which point to this, but it's also, if you're just looking at a map of trade winds, it's pretty obvious that it would have easily happened. And I'm going to quote some historians in a minute. So these are some of the theories of how the Aborigines reached Australia. They have their own legends about that. And also how melanated people reached what is like the Polynesian Islands right now. So I have here, Columbus didn't discover America. Blacks had constant contact with the New World for hundreds of years before any European was there. And colonies of Africans were found on the eastern coast of South America by the Portuguese and the Spanish. In 1920, Leo Weiner, who was a Harvard researcher, confirmed that the native languages in South America bore very similar influences to like Western African languages. Some of the words that they use for certain vegetables. For example, like sweet potatoes, yams, certain types of other vegetables, are native to West Africa. They were found in South America and called by very similar names, which is also just more proof that the West Africans had traded and like interacted with people in South America. West African crops and the Olmec heads. So now we're going to go to the next slide. This is from a book, The African Presidents in America Before Columbus, written by Floyd Hayes, I think in the like late or the early 1900s. The Olmec heads. This is from a civilization called the Olmecs that existed from 1200 to 400 BCE. Harold Lawrence wrote an article. He was a researcher also at Harvard. African Explorers: The New World, and I'm quoting him here. We can now positively state that the Mandingos, which is our tribe of Africans, of the Mali and Songhai empires, crossed the Atlantic to carry on trade with the Western Hemisphere and created colonies throughout the Americas. So that's a quote from Harold Lawrence, African Explorers of the New World. And here you see this is a, I mean, you're looking at it, I'm looking at it. I don't know, does anybody have anything to say?
Yeah. It's very distinct.
Yeah, very distinct Africoid features, right?
Features, facial features.
Yeah.
Characteristics. But it's actually found in Central America. Central American archaeological sites of the Olmecs. So I think that would have been like around Central Guatemala, El Salvador, that around the
yes.
area where the Olmecs flourished.
Do you know the name of the structure?
No, I don't know the name of that. I don't have it here. No. I have here between 1200 and 400 BCE. Is that around that same time?
Yeah. And it's but geographically that was around like. Do you have something there that tells you the geographical location of the Olmecs?
No, I just have Central and South America.
Okay.
Do you know more about it?
I know a little bit about it, but I think it's the approximation Guatemala, Salvador.
Oh, really? I was under the impression that it was further south than that.
Oh.
But I'm willing to defer to you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm from Argentina. I know something about.
No, cool. That's a shut up then.
But yeah, no, Olmecs were mainly Central American. Okay. And not really South American.
Is this something that you were familiar with in Argentina? Are these?
No, not necessarily with the extent of your research there with Africa, the first African peoples.
Cool. No, but yeah, I'm definitely interested to find out more. What's that?
So, I mean, I guess from what I remember reading about the Olmecs, they were like one of the first, I guess civilization is a little bit word, kind of like how you but,
peoples.
That I read it, they said that the Olmecs were one of the first American civilizations. Yeah. I mean, I guess is the scholarship now showing that kind of like the arrival of Africans in America kind of sparked the kind of building of monuments like that and the other like temples, and I think they also had kind of like
They did. They had like several like pyramid type structures. Yeah. Everything that I read pointed to like the quote that I read that Africans were trading with like South American and Central American colony peoples. So not that necessarily they founded those civilizations themselves, but that's just like in my research, and maybe if I read something different or branch out, I could find that.
I think that would be more accurate.
Yeah, I didn't find anything in my research that pointed to like that some African people had gone there and like necessarily established these civilizations. But
more that they were trading and these.
Yeah, so everything that I was reading, what they were trading, they established colonies, etc. Are you asking a question?
Yeah, I was just about to make a comment. Sometimes you hear conspiracy theorists, like they talk about like aliens coming down.
Yeah.
With like all these, is like, well, how could all these cultures create pyramids and stuff like that? And a lot of people just like kind of try to whitewash, you know, a lot of the Egyptians and stuff like that, the royalty.
Oh, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, okay. Well, then I won't spoil it.
But no, like, yeah.
But the point I want to make is, you know, it's more realistic to people that aliens came down, you know, 10 billion years ago and gave everyone a pyramid besides black people.
Just like using like the trade winds that we've actually seen, like, you're totally right. And that's a thing that is so like striking and so powerful to me, is that you would more easily believe that beings from space, and I'm not saying people aren't in space or somebody's not in space, but it's easier for you to believe that beings from space came here and, like you're saying, like built pyramids in Egypt and then built the structures that we see in South America and Central America, and you know, there are pyramid type structures in Ethiopia as well. It's easier for you to conceive of that than just like some black people got on boats and did it. Like, what's going on?
There's a lot of cultures shared technologies in the early beginnings of human society. Would it be possible then that they might have had contact with the Phoenicians? I mean, which were a naturally sailing society. Like
like who would have had, like the Mandingos that I'm talking about? Oh, almost surely, because if you know the geography of Africa, the Nile runs, like you can use the Nile as like a highway, you know, like there was easily trade.
Well, the reason I think about thinking about it, just looking at it, how we're talking about pyramid structures in South America, kind of like ziggurats from the
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that's why I was saying, there was so much that I could see, like, you know, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, a lot of things do make tons of sense when you just sort of step back from what you may have been like taught in school or heard about or seen even on the History Channel, and then when you just really look at it. Like, I was really amazed. I went to Hawaii a few years ago, and in Hawaii there is a museum about all the different islands around there, and they show Fijian people, like the very first Fijian people that came in contact with white colonizers. So these very old, like black and white photos of Fijian people in their like traditional gear and everything like that, and they're as black as me, if not darker, with afros, and it's just like, and their features are very distinct. And I remember thinking like, that, how could I have not, like, nobody told me that, like, how was that possible? And I feel a lot of things about it, and the most powerful thing that I feel is like, oh, I'm just happy that now I have this research and I'm able to to share it with other people, right? Yes. Any other questions?
I'm sorry.
No, please.
I just want to point out that one of the people that I look up to, admire historical research, was African American historian named John Henry Clark.
Oh yeah.
I think
I read a lot of his stuff.
He definitely delves way into the past as far as you know, the history of African peoples and how everything that you're touching on so far in this presentation points to what I.
Right. Yeah, John Henry Clark. He's pretty rad. Like, definitely one of my like go-tos and favorites. Yeah, it's just really inspiring for me to be like, wow, man, that's crazy. Like, and not to sit here and be like, oh well, this person was secretly black, and this person was secretly black. Because there are websites you can go to, like Abraham Lincoln, supposedly, you know, or J. Edgar Hoover. There's actually a lot of evidence that J. Edgar Hoover was a passing mulatto, but that's not really the point. The point is not to just like try to claim people from history. The point is to just like know the truth. And to me also, like, why is it so hard to find these things out? Like, this is a natural part. This could easily fit in a 4th grade history book before Columbus and Vasco da Gama do anything, but it's not for a reason, right? When we talk about the like stolen secrets of black people in the world instead of the forgotten tidbits about black people in history. So the Olmecs, that's that. This is another piece. I think it may be the same one, but it's like what we know to be africoid features, which is the wide flat nose, like very full lips, the certain, these are facial features. This is a phenotype that exists only in Africa, right? In people that have African descendants. Okay. I'm gonna jump now to what the brother was talking about before. These are Egyptians, or these are what? Yeah, these are what.
I was confused for a second.
That's Christian Bale.
Yeah, I actually don't know how to make this bigger again. Can somebody
That is
like?
Christian Bale.
They picked Christian Bale to play the
Oh, okay. I can't make it bigger right now. Yeah, was he Moses? So this is from a movie last year, Exodus: Gods and Kings, in which Christian Bale is playing Moses, and this other person is Ramses or whatever, his half brother. Does anybody know where Egypt is? In the world, it's in Africa. Egypt is in Africa, and at the time that the pyramids were built, historians believe that the Egyptians, they would have had several different complexions, because at that time, like, there was trading, like we talked about before. They were interacting with sub-Saharan Africans. They were interacting with people from what they would call Asia, which would just be like Turkey, it's not very far. And also later on the Greeks. So there would have been many different colors, but on the walls of the Egyptian pyramids and other artifacts we see very dark-skinned people. We see like medium tan people, but we do not see Christian Bale as Moses and Ramses. And on the topic of Egypt, since we're there, Egypt was called. Does anybody know what Egypt was called by the Egyptians? It was called Kemet at that time. We spell it K-E-M-E-T, which means black in their language. Historians speculate that they were either talking about the very fertile soil in the Nile River Valley, where the soil was black, or maybe they were talking about themselves as being black people. They were known by other civilizations around to be called some version of the black ones or the black land, but the other languages spoken to people around them when they write about Egypt, what we now know as Egypt. So these people were, probably very dark. The Arabic features that we see, I'm going to call them Arabic because I don't know if there's a better word for that, but the more Arabic features that we see now in Egypt, those people, how did they get to Egypt? Does anybody know?
After the Islamic, after Muhammad founded the Islam, like 680, 650,
right,
when it spread from Saudi Arabia, from the Arabian Peninsula to
Exactly, right. So those people are the people that live there now are colonizers. So people, I remember during the time, there was boycotts of this movie, and everybody was very angry because it's a misrepresentation of Egypt and Moses. And actually, did you know that this movie was forbidden to be shown in Egypt?
Wow.
Did you know why? Oh, well, they did it even worse in the 1950s, maybe 60s when that was made. They just kind of put a little bit of
Bronzer.
Yeah, bronzer on Charlton Heston and sent him out there to get the Ten Commandments.
Jerry was white in that movie. Pretty much a lot of the royal family of the Egyptian line were all white.
Yeah, well, they want us to think that, which is fine. And that's kind of another reason what I want to talk about. Sometimes I talk about these things to people, even black people, and they're like, well, why does it matter? Well, if it doesn't matter, then why are we doing this, though?
Yeah,
it does. Clearly it does, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it doesn't matter. It wouldn't matter to me if it didn't matter to Christian Bale and this person and whomever else, right? And Charlton Heston and everything we've seen throughout history. And whoever plays Jesus all the time, who's from Sweden.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me, but it clearly matters to somebody. And because it matters that much, it makes me think
yeah, just thinking about this further, misrepresentation of this geographic. I remember recently, just a couple of days ago, I can't remember why the conversation came up, but I ended up looking at the picture of David and Goliath. Mm-hmm. David, little kid, throws a stone at like this big wicked people. And like I think the exact term is like God's lost people or like God's damned people or something. And like this picture.
Palestinian.
Well, I'm not totally sure about the geography, but like this picture was Goliath was very dark skinned. All of God's damned people were.
That is a theme. Yeah, that's a theme.
They were all dark skinned, but David was white, and it was just this lone little white kid throwing this stone at this wicked.
Right.
I thought that was really interesting.
No, it is interesting. It's a recurring theme, right?
Yeah.
They do it in movies. The villain is often or always like he wears black, has like dark hair. You know, like he's in black. When
It makes sense because in the story, the Palestinians were enemies of the camp of Israel at the time. So it makes perfect sense to say that because as far as like the representation was, that's what you're going to see the physiology applies here.
well, yeah, what we're talking about like today, how he's represented today. Right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Commit. So I think I was making the point that Egyptians didn't look then, at the time that the pyramids were built, the way that they look now. Like their racial makeup was much different, much darker, because they were the original people of that land, not invaders. A question about like, well, why Egyptians aren't black is kind of like saying, well, Americans aren't red or whatever you want to call Indians. Like Americans aren't brown. I traveled abroad. I traveled in Asia, and I lived in Asia for like a year and a half, a few years ago. And I would tell people that I was American, and they'd be like, "No, you're not," right? Because I'm black, and they don't know. Like, and Barack Obama was president at the time that I was there, and I would get in arguments. Like I lived in Hanoi, Vietnam for a year, and I taught English. And Vietnamese people would start talking to me and be like, "Where are you from?" I'm obviously not from Hanoi, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm from America," and I would argue with somebody about it a couple times a day, because they're like, "No way. No way." They're like Nigeria, Ghana. There are a lot of African people, a few African people in Hanoi in that area because they play professional soccer. So all the black people that they know are like Nigerians that are like on their soccer team. Yeah, I would be like, no, I'm serious. No, really. Okay, I'm just getting the rice now. Some ancient artifacts related to black facial features and hair were found in Egypt, for example, like hot combs, which black women use even today to straighten their hair. Braids, like Nefertiti is shown like with her hair in braids, which is a kind of a black thing. A Greek traveler called Diodorus Siculus wrote a story about interacting with a young Egyptian, called him a black-skinned boy with woolly hair. And there are many like sort of signifiers or references to Greeks interacting with Egyptians and describing them as being black. And melanin samples melanin tests were done at the University of Dakar, which led the researchers to conclude that they were unquestionably black. Why does it matter to me so much that the Egyptians were black? And this is who knows what this is? That's the Sphinx. Yeah, that's the Sphinx.
Oh no, sorry. The Sphinx.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. So this is a side profile of the Sphinx, and we see here the same things that I'm talking about, right? Like the wide nose, the broad African features. Does anybody know what happened to the nose of the Sphinx?
It got broken off.
Yeah, do you know who it was broken off by?
Who?
French soldiers.
Napoleon. Do you know why?
Because what you've been talking about, the whole presentation, the white and the Sphinx.
The Sphinx, you can tell even without a nose, the Sphinx looks very familiar to a lot of the people we've been talking about, a lot of the people that are standing here right now talking to you. And I mean, the nose would have been like wide and flat. Why would Egyptians who were any other like racial makeup besides black like create this type of art? Why would they? And the crux to me is like, why is it so important to hide it? Like if the nose is wide, the nose is wide. If it was a Roman nose, like an Aquiline nose, then it's fine. But like, why do we go through such great lengths throughout history to continue to like obscure that fact and beat it down and hide it away? Like, what's that?
Probably dehumanized the people all the time. I mean, the French were occupying forces during that time frame, so probably like this is how I view you, this is how I want you to be viewed.
Yeah, and this is how we'll like make you view yourselves. It's like a psychological warfare, and it's really deep. It's way more serious than like if Christian Bale plays Moses.
It's a repression of the history of African Americans. You know, like you said at the very beginning of the presentation, is that they don't want future generations to know that Black people did great things, came from great things.
Yeah. And so did, I mean, many cultures of people have done amazing things and written poetry and like books and art and paintings and sculpture. Like creativity is not just only Black people have creativity, like only Asian people or any type of people have it. But I keep asking myself, like, why is it so important? And what are they trying to get at? And then how can I like subvert that and fuck it up, right? Like, so here I am.
It's definitely a disrespect.
Yeah, it's like just like, and it's so pervasive. It's just like sick. Like you cannot even find an example of a culture or a story or anything that hasn't been like whitewashed and like rearranged and fixed up. Like, so we're gonna go on to lighter topics.
So, I have a question.
Yes.
During the Crusades, I know that the French sent plenty of crusaders to the Middle East and to Egypt. But I don't think they had enough technology, or they weren't able to really destroy. Yeah, this pyramid. I mean, this.
Oh, you're talking about. Let's go back to this.
In the Crusades, but it's about 1800s after gunpowder had been invented that they were able to.
Well, the Chinese had gunpowder long before that. I mean, I'm not saying that,
Okay, true. But in the West, they were
established until probably around like 13th century.
what'd you say?
The Silk Road, along with the Hall.
But yeah, it makes total sense that only after Napoleon, in the Napoleonic Wars is when they decided to get more, intensify this war, this historical revisionist, this revisionist version of history, trying to destroy anything that was African, or rewrite history.
To rewrite history. To be fair, we see this with conquering and occupying forces in many different situations. So it's not always, I mean, it is always white people doing it to brown people, but it's other brown people doing it to each other and like.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, you said about that Egyptian, the Moses movie.
Yeah.
You said that you were about to say something about it was banned in Egypt?
Yeah, it was like banned in Egypt. They couldn't show it in Egypt. I believe it wasn't about the racial inaccuracy. It was because it showed Egyptians in like a poor light. It was like they were shown as like thieves or whatever or something. I didn't see the movie. I wasn't gonna watch it. But the movie wasn't not allowed to be shown in Egypt, which I thought was really funny. Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. So we just have a few more slides. Who's this? Who's that guy? Does anybody know who that is?
He's a saint.
He is a saint.
One of the first,
Is it
first
Saint
century.
Augustine?
First century. Yeah.
No, he is a saint. This guy's name is Saint Nicholas.
Santa.
Oh shit!
Oh shit. Yeah.
Saint Nicholas.
This is Saint Nicholas. So let me tell you, does anybody know the story of Saint Nicholas? I'm going to tell you. Saint Nicholas was born in Patara, Turkey. He was a wealthy Moor from this like very rich family. He is, they were, what's that? Anybody said something?
So he was from Mauritania?
Is that
What it
Patara,
means
Turkey?
Moor, right?
No, Turkey.
Oh, Moor means black, and the Moors were like,
Yeah, but it's because Moors came from Mauritania, which is in Africa.
okay, yeah, cool. I don't have that note, but I'm sure you're right. This is Saint Nicholas. He was from a wealthy family in Turkey. They were very, very wealthy and very pious. His parents, both of his parents, died in a plague, which were common at that time, around the time that he was alive, and he traveled around and he gave his money away. Is the legend, right, or the story? He was and he was a real person, but you know the kind of some of the stories vary. He just was giving his money away and like giving to the poor and to sick people because Jesus said, you know, like you have to give away all that you own and follow me, and he was doing this thing that Jesus told him to do. This story, you know, like traveled throughout the rest of like the area that he lived and into Europe, and Saint Nicholas, who is now called by a shortened version of that, which is, what do we call Saint Nicholas now? Santa Claus, right? Kind of like, it makes sense, right? It kind of goes together when you think about it like that. This is the original St. Nicholas, guys. This is a Russian icon. This is the St. Nicholas of Myra, which is somewhere in Russia right now. So this is one of the original oldest pictures of that, and I have another picture of him right here too. Actually, this is the Russian one, the Russian icon of St. Nicholas of Myra. And here it shows his, you know, it shows him doing good deeds that we know him for. Like he's like giving some money to some people, he's helping some other people, he's doing some other stuff. Like, yeah, he later became. He looks very different now. And I won't, you know, I feel like we could all go into why, but there's that. And so this is the guy that we all came to see. Beethoven was teased for his black skin during his childhood and his like early adolescence. He was very swarthy and dark. He had like kind of crazy hair. He is half Moorish, and his house was called the, I can't speak German, Schwarzpanier House, which is called the House of the Black Spaniard. And he was kind of called like all these different like Schwarz is the way that Germans say black, and he had all these nicknames like sort of like that were variations of that. And he was teased as a kid and whatever else. And so Beethoven, the great musical genius, was a Moor, right? He was widely known as a Moor. It's like not even really disputed in history. Like anybody will tell you that his mom, I believe that his mother was black. So it's crazy that, you know, when you see reproductions of Beethoven now, they do keep his hair as being crazy. You know, they'll show you his crazy hair, but they make him white, which is kind of like, I don't know. It's interesting that they keep the hair instead of just giving him sort of a big wavy afro. They just make him have crazy white hair. Yeah. So even if you would go to, you can find it. It's not even really disputable in history. And now I'm going to end with my last slide, which is a point that I've sort of touched on and made before. It's not my point to stand up here and be like, this person was secretly black, and these people were secretly black, and these people were secretly black, just to like jerk myself off about black people. It is important to me to know the truth, to share that truth with people, and to like inspire. Like I like how people's eyes light up when I say like, oh, you know, did you know that this happened or that this happened, and to give people a sort of a different perspective on looking at black people if they are black themselves, so that black people can look at themselves differently. And so that other people can see blacks differently. It's sort of ingrained in, you can't escape it. You can't escape like what Martin Luther King Jr. was saying before, is like, you're taught from the very, your very first day on earth, like everything black is dirty and wrong and bad, and black people are dirty and wrong and bad and whatever else. You're taught about black people. But that is not true. The most original person that we know is misrepresented in history, who was shown to be white when we know that he was not. Nobody will argue with you.
He was actually Palestinian Arab.
Yeah, right. The Bible says in Revelation that he had skin the color of bronze and hair like wool, right? Which is, he's not, you know.
His bronzer on.
His halo is giving him a angelic glow of tan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so melanated people throughout the world are, you know, are sort of given these whitewashed, reducted versions of their own history, and it, you know, and I'm just here to do my part to refute that. Anything else?
Quick question. So you know the okay, so you said that Beethoven's mother was black.
A Spanish Moor, yeah.
Okay, so she was Spanish Moor, and his father was was more Europe.
Yeah.
That's a European. Okay. Alright, that's.
Okay, I'm not saying that he was like African black. I said in the beginning, I was like, you know, I use that as a like an attention grabber, right?
Right.
Did you hear me say that?
No, but yeah, you answered my question. No, I didn't mean that. You didn't say that.
Yeah, I want to be very clear. Like I use that because it is attention getting, and it's like, you know, it's a good title, right? And then I start off. I've given this presentation in different forms before, and I start off with being like, okay, you know, I use that. Now that you're paying attention, you know, let's delve more into history.
So she was probably born in Spain. Is that what you're saying? Maybe.
Yes.
More?
Yeah. So she would have
Spain
been of
was
like.
colonized by the Moors.
Yeah, it would have been like the Ottoman type shit, right?
Before the Ottomans. Yeah, like around 700 AD.
I think so. So 700?
711. Yeah, I did history.
Okay, I won't guess it. I won't second guess it. Yeah, and one other thing is I'm going to say is to show you how powerful it is to either have representations of yourself or to not have them. Everybody knows who that is. We know that he could not have looked like that, but you know who it's supposed to be, right? And this is my final example of how powerful it is to be able to see yourself in your history, in your religion, in your art, and in your culture. And if it wasn't so powerful, we wouldn't have this, right? You wouldn't know who that is. Because he could not have looked like this. No matter what he looked like, we know he didn't look like this, right? And
Definitely didn't look like that.
Right.
He's a European.
Right.
I mean, he wasn't born in Europe. Wasn't like.
Right.
He was.
And so.
He was of some sort of color. That is for sure.
And he's almost never shown that way. The most you'll get is like a dark-skinned, like an Italian white guy. So my in ending, I just want to say that it obviously is very powerful to be able to.
Well, it's just like, you know, it's kind of an awkward way of like trying to, I guess, arbitrarily expect a person outside to stop themselves. And
Yeah.
doing this, it's like saying, hey, you know, you couldn't possibly, according to religion anyway, like, you know, give praise to the savior of the world. I mean, that would be like the ultimate black and faith, I guess, so Eurocentrism, you know, but it would be because of Eurocentrism that it feels like, you know, they would have to do something like that.
Right. Exactly, right? Because it doesn't work any other way. Let me ask you guys this. Could we have a brown or a Palestinian Jesus? Jesus would look more like you, maybe, than this person. Could Americans worship this Jesus? Could like Rush Limbaugh and anybody on Fox News worship a brown Jesus?
Well, they constantly work to deny that Palestinians even exist.
Well, yeah, they don't know that Palestine is a place, right?
So no, it wouldn't be acceptable.
Right. Could the world be different? Like, could you treat and I don't know. So I'll just end there. My point being that you know, your representation is powerful. Seeing yourself is powerful in your religion and art and culture is powerful. And if it wasn't so powerful, there wouldn't be such a concentrated movement to deny the history of so many people who we want to like oppress and keep in this like subservient role. And I'll end there. Thanks, guys.